My stepdaughter has been the perfect child for 2 years, so I checked her browser history. I still can't believe I did it. 2 years. 2 years of Sarah being this absolute angel. She was the quiet, sweet kid who always had her homework done, helped around the house, never talked back. My wife, her mom, practically worshipped the ground she walked on. I thought I'd finally gotten lucky with a smooth, blended family situation. Man, was I wrong. It was a random Tuesday night. Sarah was at a friend's house. I was just tidying up the living room, and her laptop was sitting open on the coffee table. My gut just twisted. It was a stupid, paranoid impulse, but I picked it up. One click just to see. And there was hundreds of search queries. How to earn trust fast. How to fake crying. Symptoms of emotional abuse. Make social worker believe you. My heart started pounding like a drum solo. What the hell was going on? I scrolled and scrolled, my blood running cold. It got worse. Much, much worse. There were searches for anonymous blogging platforms, then links to a specific blog. My fingers were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the laptop. I clicked on it. The blog was called My Life with a Monster. And every single post, going back 2 years, detailed abused stories that painted me, her stepfather, as some kind of controlling, paranoid sociopath. My own words were twisted, my actions reframed as deliberate cruelty. It even had fake school photos that looked just like her. I was seeing red. How could she after everything? I wanted to scream, to smash the laptop. But then my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Just one line. Check the comment section. Monster. There's a new entry. My blood ran colder. A new entry? Someone knew I was looking. My mind raced. Was it Sarah playing some twisted game? Or someone else entirely? I clicked back to the blog, my eyes darting to the comment section. Sure enough, a fresh comment, just posted seconds ago. It read, "He's watching you, Sarah. Don't let him break you. You deserve better." The comment was from an anonymous user, of course, but the timing was chilling. It felt like a direct taunt, a confirmation that someone was actively monitoring my actions. I closed the laptop with a snap, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the silent house. My hands were still trembling. The perfect child, the sweet, innocent stepdaughter, all a facade. This whole time, while I was trying to bond with her, taking her out for ice cream, helping with homework, she was painting me as a monster online. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. What kind of sick, manipulative kid was she? When Sarah walked through the door an hour later, all smiles and chatter about her friend's new puppy, I just stared at her. Her face, usually so open and guileless, now seemed to hide 1,000 secrets. "Hey, Dad," she chirped, dropping her backpack. "What's up? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Sarah," I said, my voice tight, barely recognizing it as my own. "We need to talk. Right now." Her smile faltered. "Oh, about what?" She glanced nervously towards the laptop, still sitting on the coffee table. My heart clenched. She knew. She absolutely knew. "Your laptop." I started pointing to it. I was looking for something, and I saw your browser history." I watched her face, hoping for some flicker of remorse, some sign that she'd explain, apologize. Instead, a mask of bewilderment dropped over her features, quickly followed by a defensive scowl. "You went through my stuff?" she exploded, her voice rising. "That's an invasion of privacy. What were you even doing on my laptop?" The sudden shift from innocent chatterbox to outraged teenager was jarring. She sounded genuinely angry, but was it real, or just another performance? "You have no right. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me," I said, my own temper flaring. Hundreds of searches. Sarah. How to earn trust fast. How to fake crying. Symptoms of emotional abuse. And then that blog. My Life with a Monster. What is that? I practically spat the words out. Her eyes widened, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths before they clouded over with what looked like genuine tears. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know anything about a blog. I didn't search for any of that." "Don't lie to me," I roared, standing up. "It's all right there. Your searches, the blog, the fake photos. It's you, Sarah? You've been doing this for 2 years, telling everyone I'm some kind of abuser." She started crying then, real tears, but I couldn't tell if they were genuine or just part of her how to fake crying repertoire. "I didn't. I swear to God, I didn't. Why would I do something like that? You've always been good to me." Her voice was thick with sobs, and she hugged herself, looking small and vulnerable. It was a masterful performance, if it was one. Just then, the front door opened, and my wife, Emily, walked in, a grocery bag in each arm. She took one look at Sarah, sobbing, and me, red-faced and furious, and her face went pale. "What is going on here?" she demanded, dropping the bags with a thud. "Your daughter," I began, pointing at Sarah, "has been running an anonymous blog for 2 years, detailing how I've supposedly been abusing her." I watched Emily's face, expecting shock, anger at Sarah, something. Instead, her eyes narrowed, focusing on me with a chilling intensity. You went through her private things? Emily's voice was dangerously low. You accuse her of this blog? What proof do you have? She went to Sarah, pulling her into a hug, stroking her hair. Sarah buried her face in Emily's shoulder, her sobs intensifying. The browser history, the search queries, the blog itself, it's all there. I grabbed the laptop, opened it, and tried to show her, but Emily just pushed my hand away. Get that thing out of my daughter's face, she snapped. Sarah, tell me the truth. Did you do this? Sarah pulled back from Emily, her face tear-streaked and blotchy. She looked at me, then at her mom. No, Mom, I didn't. He's gone crazy. He's always been so paranoid, always watching me, and now this. He's making it all up. Paranoid, I scoffed. I found the evidence. Emily, she's been building a case against me. Emily stood up, stepping between Sarah and me. Her eyes were blazing. You know what? I've had enough of this, John. You've been acting weird for weeks, jumping at shadows, constantly asking Sarah where she's going, who she's with. And now you're accusing her of something like this? My daughter? She wouldn't lie about abuse, John. No child would. Not like this. But she's lying. I pleaded, my voice cracking. Look at the evidence. The only evidence I see is you invading her privacy and trying to blame her for something you clearly imagined. Emily's voice was rising, matching my own. You know what? I think you need to cool off. Away from us. Away from Sarah. My stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying, she said, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief, that maybe you should go stay with your brother for a while. Or a hotel. Just get out, before you do something you really regret. I stared at her, then at Sarah, who was now peeking at me from behind Emily, her eyes wide and still filled with tears. Was this another part of the plan? To get me out of the house? My own wife, choosing her daughter's supposed innocence over my very real distress. It felt like the world was shifting beneath my feet. You're kicking me out? I couldn't believe it. After 5 years of marriage, after everything we'd built. Until you can get a grip, yes. Emily yelled. I can't have this kind of accusation, this kind of paranoia in my house. Not against my daughter. I stood there for a moment, stunned, feeling the cold weight of the laptop in my hand. They believed her. They truly believed her over me. The monster she created was already taking hold, ruining my life from the inside out. I looked at Sarah one last time, her face a mixture of fear and something else. Something that looked disturbingly like triumph. I turned and walked out of the house, the door slamming shut behind me. The cool night air hit my face, but did nothing to clear the burning confusion in my mind. I was out, kicked out of my own home, accused of being a monster because of a blog I still couldn't fathom Sarah creating. Where did I go from here? How do I fight something so insidious, so untraceable, that had already turned my family against me? I had to prove it wasn't her, or at least that I wasn't a monster. But how? My mind raced, consumed by the gnawing question. If not Sarah, then who? And why? I ended up at a motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and the faint smell of stale cigarettes. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's tear-streaked face, heard Emily's furious words, and scrolled through those damning blog posts. My life with a monster. The title echoed in my head, a cruel, mocking refrain. The next morning, I tried calling Emily. She didn't answer. I texted, Emily, please, we need to talk. I can prove Sarah is lying. Just look at the searches, the blog. No response. It was like I had vanished from their lives overnight. My lawyer, a friend from college, told me to give it a few days, that Emily was probably just emotional. But I knew this was different. This was deeper. I spent the next few days in a haze, barely eating, barely sleeping. I went over every interaction I'd ever had with Sarah, searching for clues, for signs I'd missed. Was she always this good at hiding things? Had I been blind for 2 years? Or was this something beyond her? A part of me, a small, desperate part, still clung to the idea that Sarah wasn't capable of such calculated cruelty. But then the evidence would flash back. The precise search terms, the timing of the anonymous text, the chilling accuracy of the abused stories that twisted my everyday actions into something sinister. I decided I couldn't just sit there. I needed more evidence, something undeniable. I thought about trying to get access to Sarah's laptop again, but that was a non-starter. Emily would never allow it. I needed to find the source of that blog. It had to be traceable, somehow. Every website leaves a digital footprint, right? I started with the basics. I found the Blogs platform, a popular free blogging site. They had a report abuse option. I filled it out, explaining everything, but I knew it would be a long shot. They'd probably get hundreds of fake reports a day. I needed something more direct. I needed an IP address. I knew a guy, Mark, from my old IT job. He was a bit of a gray hat hacker, always pushing the boundaries. I called him, carefully explaining the situation without giving away too many personal details. Look, Mark, I need to trace an IP address from a blog. It's anonymous, but it's causing serious problems. Mark was quiet for a moment. That's tricky, John. Most of these free blog sites are pretty good about protecting user privacy. They won't just hand over IP logs without a court order. Is there any other way? I pressed. Anything? I'm desperate, man. He sighed. Okay, so here's what you might be able to do. Sometimes, if the user isn't careful, they might have embedded something or interacted in a way that leaves a trace. Like if they use a unique image that wasn't properly anonymized, or if they link to something that resolves back to their real IP, even indirectly. What about that anonymous text? I asked, a new idea forming. The one I got? Could that be traced? Mark was more optimistic about that. Maybe. If it came from a burner phone, it's tough. But if it was sent through an app, or if they slipped up and sent it from a regular number, we could potentially get a hit. You still have a number? Yeah, I saved it, I said, pulling out my phone. I gave him the number. Any chance of getting a name from it? Slim, unless it's a registered number, and we can get a subpoena, Mark replied. But we might be able to geolocate the last known signal tower, or at least confirm if it's a burner. Give me a few hours. I'll see what I can dig up on the text message. For the blog, you'd need something specific from the site itself. I thanked him. A sliver of hope rekindled in my chest. If I could just trace that text, prove it wasn't Sarah, maybe Emily would listen. Maybe she'd see that something else was going on. Hours later, Mark called back. Okay, good news and bad news. The good news is I got a hit on the text. It's not a burner. It's a legitimate prepaid phone, but it's been used in a specific area, mostly around the downtown district. And the bad news? I asked, my heart thumping. It's registered under a fake name, and the signal keeps bouncing around. They're using a VPN or some kind of proxy for the data connection, so pinpointing the exact location is impossible. But here's the kicker. The phone's connected to a specific Wi-Fi network sometimes, and that Wi-Fi network belongs to a coffee shop. A really popular one, right in the downtown area. A coffee shop? I felt a strange jolt. Which one? Mark gave me the address. It was a place I knew, a trendy spot near the university. So someone was sending me that text while sitting at that coffee shop. Potentially, Mark confirmed. Or they were there when the text was sent through their app, and the phone registered with that Wi-Fi. It's not definitive proof, but it's a lead. Could be someone you know, who frequents that place. My mind immediately jumped to Sarah. Did she go to that coffee shop? Not usually. Her usual hangouts were closer to her school. This felt different. I knew I couldn't just walk into the coffee shop and demand answers. I needed more. I went back to the blog. I scrolled through every post, every comment. The comment section was mostly filled with sympathetic strangers, but a few seemed a little too detailed, a little too knowledgeable about the fictional abuse scenarios. It was almost like they were writing with Sarah, adding details, encouraging her. My mind kept coming back to the anonymous text. Check the comments section. There's a new entry. Then, I noticed something. A subtle detail I'd overlooked in my initial panic. In one of the older blog posts, describing a terrible family dinner where I supposedly ranted for an hour about something trivial, there was a mention of a specific, obscure brand of sparkling water that only I ever bought. It wasn't something Sarah would typically notice, let alone remember, or even care about. It was a detail only someone intimately familiar with our home, and with my habits, would know. Sarah might have been aware, but to include it in such a specific, damning context, it fell off. My mind went to other possible culprits. My in-laws. No, they adored me. Emily's friends? Unlikely. Then a cold, hard thought settled in my gut. My estranged daughter. I had a daughter from my first marriage, Olivia. She was 22 now. Our relationship had been, for lack of a better word, non-existent for the past 5 years. After her mother and I divorced, things got messy. Olivia blamed me for everything, for ruining her mother's life, as she put it. She was angry, resentful. When I married Emily, Olivia refused to even acknowledge it. She cut me off completely. I tried to reach out a few times, but she'd always shut me down. Could this be her? Could she be this vindictive? The idea was horrifying, but also made a twisted kind of sense. Olivia was smart, tech-savvy. She'd always been good with computers, and she certainly had a motive, revenge. Ruining my new life, just as she felt I'd ruin hers. I went back to the specific blog post, mentioning the sparkling water. I remember that day. Sarah had been in her room, playing video games. Emily was out. Only Olivia had been present during one of her rare, strained visits a couple of years ago, before she completely cut me off. She'd sat at the table, silent, glaring, while I talked about some new work project. She'd even made a snide remark about my bourgeois tastes when I offered her some of this sparkling water. A cold certainty began to form. It wasn't Sarah. It couldn't be. This was Olivia. But how could I prove it? How could she make it look so much like Sarah? The phrasing, the fake school photos, even the voice cloning she might have used in some of the more elaborate evidence posts on the blog. I remembered seeing a few short audio clips, supposedly of Sarah crying or describing incidents. I hadn't paid them much mind, dismissing them as part of Sarah's manipulative tactics. But now, I needed more than a hunch. I needed concrete proof. I called Mark again. Mark, I have a new theory. What if someone is impersonating Sarah, using AI to generate images, even voice cloning? Mark was quiet for a moment. That's next level, John, but definitely possible, especially with the tech available now. AI can generate shockingly realistic faces and voices. If they had enough samples of Sarah's voice, say, from social media videos, or even just recordings from phone, they could synthesize pretty convincing audio. And the images? I asked. The fake school photos? Same deal. Give an AI enough photos of Sarah, and it can create new ones, put her in different settings, even age her up or down slightly. It's disturbing, but it's happening. So, how do I prove it's not Sarah? You need to analyze the digital footprint of those images and audio files, Mark explained. Look for metadata anomalies, inconsistencies, telltale signs of AI generation. It's not always obvious to the naked eye, but there are tools. And if this person linked anything, even subtly, back to their own digital accounts, that's where you'd find a lead. Social engineering, you mentioned? That's the scariest part. If someone's manipulating people, getting information, playing mind games, that's a whole different level of threat. Could you help me with that? I asked. Analyze the files, try to trace the original source. It'll cost you, Mark said, and it's a deep dive. But yeah, I can try. Send me everything you can find from that blog, the images, the audio clips, everything you can download. I'll run it through some forensic tools. It won't be quick and there's no guarantee, but if anyone can find a digital crumb, it's me. I spent the rest of the day downloading every single piece of content from that blog. The images, the short audio clips, even the embedded videos that showed blurry figures that could have been me, but were always just out of focus. It was a chilling collection, a digital dossier of a monster that didn't exist, carefully constructed to destroy me. As I clicked through the posts, I noticed the insidious nature of the stories. They weren't grand, dramatic acts of abuse. They were subtle, manipulative twists of everyday events. A raised voice during a disagreement became screaming until I cried. A grounded phone became digital imprisonment. My attempts at discipline became controlling behavior. It was all designed to be just plausible enough to raise concern, but insidious enough to be hard to directly refute without sounding defensive. I sent everything to Mark, then sat back, the weight agonizing. Emily still wasn't returning my calls. Sarah wasn't responding to my texts. I was completely isolated, cut off from my family, my life in tatters, all because of this digital phantom. Days blurred into a week. Mark was quiet, which I knew meant he was deep in the weeds. I tried to go back to work, but my mind was elsewhere. Every interaction felt tainted. Did my colleagues know? Had they seen the blog? Was my reputation already ruined? I imagined whispers behind my back, pitying glances, judgment. Then Mark called. His voice was grim. "John, you were right. It's not Sarah, and it's worse than you thought." My breath hitched. "What did you find?" "The images, they're AI generated. Not perfect, but good enough to fool most people. There are subtle distortions, artifacts that only specific software leaves behind. Same with the audio. Voice cloning. Pretty sophisticated stuff. Actually, whoever did this put a lot of effort in. And then there's the IP. You found the IP?" I asked, my heart hammering. "Yeah, it took some doing, but I managed to trace a few specific data packets from the blog's backend, combined with some cross-referencing from an old, publicly available forum post that linked back to the same email address used to set up the anonymous blog account. It's not a direct hit, but it's damn close. The original source for those posts, at least for a good chunk of them, originates from an apartment building downtown. The one near that coffee shop I told you about. Downtown, I breathed. "Olivia, you have a suspect in mind?" Mark asked, his voice careful. "My estranged daughter, Olivia." I confirmed, the words tasting bitter. "She lives downtown, and she hates me." "Well," Mark said, "the IP traces back to a unit in that building. And here's the clincher. I found a few unique digital signatures embedded in some of the older blog content. Small, almost invisible watermarks from a niche photo editing software. I cross-referenced that with old social media posts. And guess whose profile used to proudly display their work with that exact software? Olivia's. She even did tutorials on it years ago. The confirmation hit me like a cold wave. It was her. All this time, it wasn't Sarah, it was Olivia. My own flesh and blood, systematically dismantling my life out of a festering, vengeful hatred. The brilliance of it, the sheer malice. She hadn't just created a fake story. She had created a fake person, a digital doppelganger of Sarah, to deliver the blow. "What do I do, Mark?" I asked, feeling a strange mix of vindication and despair. I had the proof, but what good would it do? My marriage was already shattered. Emily wouldn't even talk to me. "You take this to Emily," Mark said firmly. "You show her every bit of this. The AI evidence, the IP trace, the digital signatures. Everything. She has to see it." I gathered all the evidence Mark had compiled. The forensic reports, the IP logs, the screenshots of Olivia's old posts. My hands shook as I packed it into a folder. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. This was about Olivia. What kind of person orchestrates something so cruel, so elaborate, against their own father? It spoke of a deep, psychological wound. I drove back to my house, my heart pounding. It was late, but I couldn't wait. I rang the doorbell repeatedly. Finally, the porch light flickered on, and Emily opened the door, her face drawn and tired. She saw me, and her expression hardened. "John, I told you I need space. You can't just show up here. Emily, please. Just 5 minutes," I pleaded, holding up the folder. "I have proof. Real proof. It's not Sarah. It was never Sarah." She hesitated, her eyes flickering to the folder. The exhaustion on her face seemed to win out over her anger. She stepped aside, letting me in. Sarah wasn't around, probably asleep. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd first shown Emily the damning blog posts. I laid out the reports, the screenshots, everything Mark had given me. I explained it all, calmly, meticulously. The AI analysis, the voice cloning, the IP trace, Olivia's old software posts, the connection to the coffee shop. I showed her the metadata, the digital signatures, the hidden artifacts. Emily listened, her initial skepticism slowly giving way to a pale disbelief. Her eyes widened as I explained the capabilities of modern AI, how easy it was to create a digital phantom. She picked up a screenshot of Olivia's old profile, where she proudly displayed her digital art created with the exact niche software. "Olivia," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Your daughter? But why?" "Revenge, Emily," I said, my voice heavy. "She's always blamed me for her mother's unhappiness, for our divorce. She felt I ruined her mother's life. This is her way of ruining mine." Emily looked at me, then at the table laden with evidence. The anger that had been simmering in her eyes for days slowly morphed into something like horror, then crushing guilt. "Oh my God, John. I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. Sarah was so convincing. She was crying. She was so scared. She was scared because she knew she was being impersonated," I said gently. "She was genuinely confused and frightened. Olivia was using her, manipulating her, putting her in an impossible position." Emily covered her face with her hands, silent sobs racking her body. "My poor Sarah. What has this done to her? And to us?" "I don't know him," I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "But we have to tell her. And we have to figure out how to deal with Olivia." The next morning, we sat Sarah down. Emily, her face still streaked with tears, held her hand. I laid out the evidence, explaining it again, this time to Sarah. Her eyes went from wide-eyed fear to dawning comprehension, then to a profound sadness. "So it wasn't me," she whispered, her voice small. "You didn't think I was a monster?" "Never, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't imagine what. I'm so sorry I yelled at you, that I accused you." Sarah looked at me, then at Emily. "It was Olivia." Emily nodded, tears welling up again. "It seems so, baby. John's proof is pretty solid." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing. She used my name? My photos? She made it sound like I was saying those things. A shudder ran through her. That's really messed up. It was a first step, a fragile bridge beginning to mend. Emily apologized profusely, her regret palpable. Sarah, though still shaken, seemed to understand that I hadn't been paranoid, but rather a victim of a cruel, unseen hand. We spent the rest of the day talking, slowly piecing together the timeline, the subtle ways Olivia might have gathered information, the small details she twisted. Emily remembered a few times Olivia had visited, making casual conversation with Sarah, asking about school, about me. Innocent questions at the time, but now chilling in their intent. But proving it to the family was one thing. What about the outside world? The blog was still out there, its insidious claims poisoning my reputation. Even if we took it down, the internet never truly forgets. People who had read it, who had formed an opinion of me as a monster, wouldn't just forget because an anonymous blog disappeared. Emily suggested we contact the police, but I knew it would be a long, drawn-out process. Proving digital impersonation and harassment, especially with AI involvement, was complex, and the thought of dragging Olivia's name, and by extension, my own, through a public legal battle, filled me with dread. It would just draw more attention to the blog, cementing the monster narrative even further. I decided to try a different approach. I contacted the blogging platform directly, armed with Mark's evidence. I explained the situation, provided the forensic reports, the IP traces, everything. It took days of back and forth, but finally, they agreed to take down the blog. It was a small victory, but it felt hollow. The damage was done. My marriage was on shaky ground, despite Emily's apologies. Sarah was traumatized, and my reputation, particularly within our extended family and social circle, was irrevocably tainted. I could feel the cold shoulder from some relatives, the awkward silence at family gatherings, the hesitant glances from neighbors. The monster had become a permanent part of my narrative, even if it was a lie. I knew I needed to confront Olivia, not just to accuse her, but to understand. To understand the depth of her hatred, the psychological unraveling that led her to this. Mark had given me Olivia's current address, the one associated with the traced IP. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I drove to her apartment building. It was a modern, glass-fronted place, nothing like the cozy home where she'd grown up. I felt a knot of dread in my stomach as I took the elevator up. What would I say? How would she react? Would she even admit it? I knocked on her door. Silence. I knocked again, harder. Nothing. I tried calling her phone, the number I hadn't dialed in years. It went straight to voicemail. I waited for a long time, leaning against the hallway wall, listening to the muffled sounds of other apartments. Finally, I gave up. She wasn't there, or she wasn't answering. I tried again a few days later, and then a week after that. Each time, the same result. No answer. It was as if she'd vanished. I tried calling her old friends, distant relatives who might still be in touch. No one knew where she was. She had seemingly disappeared, leaving behind only the digital wreckage of my life. Then, about a month later, I got a call. It was from Olivia's mother, my ex-wife. Her voice was strained, filled with a raw despair I hadn't heard in years. "John," she choked out. "It's Olivia. She's in the hospital." My heart leaped into my throat. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She had a breakdown," my ex-wife explained, her voice cracking. "A severe psychotic episode. They found her disoriented, wandering the streets, talking about monsters and digital prisons. She's been admitted to a facility, a mental institution. A mental institution." The words echoed in my mind. Not revenge, but a manifestation of her own profound, untreated pain. The elaborate scheme, the AI, the social engineering, it was all part of the deeper unraveling. My anger, which had been a burning ember, suddenly extinguished, replaced by a cold, aching pity. I hesitated, then asked, Can I visit her?" My ex-wife was quiet for a moment. "I don't know if that's a good idea, John. She's very fragile, and she's still very angry, especially at you." "I understand," I said, "but I need to see her, just once, to understand." She reluctantly agreed, giving me the facility's name and visiting hours. The drive there was long, filled with a heavy silence. I thought about the little girl Olivia used to be, the one who would run to greet me with a fierce hug, who would laugh at my bad jokes. Now, she was here, in a place designed to contain shattered minds. The facility was clean, quiet, almost sterile. A nurse led me down a long corridor, the air heavy with the scent of disinfectant. We stopped outside a room. The door was ajar. I pushed it open slowly. Olivia was sitting on a bed, staring out a window at a patch of gray sky. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes plain. She looked thinner, her eyes hollow, but a strange, unsettling calmness had settled over her features. She looked up as I entered, and her eyes, once filled with such venomous hatred, now seemed distant, almost vacant. "Olivia," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't respond immediately, just kept staring at me, a faint, almost imperceptible smile beginning to form on her lips. It wasn't the triumphant smile I had imagined Sarah giving, but something else entirely. Something colder, more knowing. "You came," she finally whispered, her voice soft, airy, completely devoid of the sharp edge I remembered. "I did," I said. I know about the blog, Olivia. I know it was you." The smile on her face widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her gaze seemed to pierce through me, to see beyond my accusations, to something deeper. "Yes," she breathed, a quiet satisfaction in her tone. "It was me." She paused, her eyes glinting with a chilling triumph. "And now you know what forgotten feels like." The words hung in the air, a final devastating blow. Forgotten. That's what she felt. Forgotten and discarded, like her mother had been. And her revenge wasn't just to ruin me, but to make me feel that same agonizing emptiness. It wasn't about the blog anymore, or the accusations. It was about the utter destruction of everything I held dear, leaving me as isolated and broken as she felt. My reputation was ruined, my marriage was hanging by a thread, and my new family was scarred. And the architect of it all, my own daughter, sat before me, seemingly at peace with the devastation she had wrought. There was no real resolution, no happy ending. Just the cold, hard truth of a life irrevocably altered by a daughter's fractured mind and a vengeful plan. I stood there, staring at her, the silence stretching between us, filled with the echoes of everything lost. What do you say to that? What do you do when the person who destroyed your life is already destroyed herself? There was no justice to be had, only a profound, unending sorrow. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her there, smiling that unsettling smile, forever trapped in her own twisted sense of victory.